Hello, and welcome back to Let's Design Shards, a Minecraft MOBA adventure map. We've been making progress and have come quite a ways from the empty space with which we began. So, with the wall's form and framework built into the shard, it's time to hone these outer defenses and complete the base's outer layout. To that end, we'll be finishing up these fortifications, placing the remaining towers, finalizing the upper wall segment, constructing the lower and upper gates, and completing the large central tower which will connect the lower and upper walls. There's a good bit on our plate today, so without further ado, let's get this started. Starting with the lower wall, we needed to prepare the area for a central gate. Copying the existing tower and making some minor modifications, I placed a new tower. This created a good-sized segment between the towers where a new gate could be placed. Putting this on hold for a moment, I knew there needed to be a quick and convenient way to access the ramparts. Along the back of the wall, I began constructing a good-sized stairway. I gave these stairs a wide and shallow slope, making it easier for multiple players and NPCs to travel up and down from the walls. Back to the segment between our towers, I began work on the lower gate. Carving into the wall, then using the stack command to blast through to the other side, I formed a wide passageway into the base. After adding some stairs to slope the design inward, creating a nice looking archway, I sealed off the inner wall segments on either side of the gateway. I then began adding iron bars to the design, representing an outer portcullis. You can't quite see it at the moment, but at this point I began carving into the ceiling, adding bars upwards into the wall and evening their placement. This way, when a player stands underneath the gate, they can look up and see the bars extending into the walls above. From here, I added another layer of iron bars and placed a layer of wood fence between the two iron curtains. Extending the forward layer downwards, I carved further into the sides of the wall, and then ran the bars both sides of the gate into these expansions. I found this small detail really added to the look, and after extending the wood fence and secondary iron bars down as well, I finished the passage by lighting it with torches. Moving on to the upper wall, I again used World Edit paste commands to place the towers, modifying them as needed for their specific positions on the wall. After laying down the second tower, I also designed the internal structure of the wall, along with the outer ramparts, and made use of that design further down the wall at a later time. It was then time for the central tower. After determining the tower's center point, I created a quick circle to frame the workspace. Raising a stone cylinder to make sure I was pleased with the general size, I cleared the area completely and began work on the first level. I built up a light supporting frame, then proceeded to fill the base layer with wood planks to continue the general theme. Moving up from the tower's connection with the mountain, I filled the area with stone brick, forming the tower's base, before laying down some additional framework and completing the base layer of wood. I then took wood stairs and began to curve a path upward around the inside of the tower. The stairway needed to be wide enough that any pathing AI would have no trouble navigating the tower, so I made sure to keep this in mind as I designed the spiral. Using the World Edit copy and paste commands, I continued the spiral upwards. Like the lower wall segments, the upper wall also has an internal pathway. So, after reaching the midsection of the upper wall, I spent some time designing this connection point. After completing the tower, I did take my design from farther down the wall and applied it to this segment. Moving higher from this interior connection, I brought the stairs up to connect to the wall's top in a similar manner. I then began filling in the outer walls and quickly performed some needed adjustments on the stairs before completing the outer shell. Adding in the upper archway as a reference point, I proceeded to bring the spiral staircase even higher. I soon realized the stairs were not positioned exactly the way I wanted, so I selected the area in question and used World Edit to cut, rotate, and then paste my stairs into proper alignment. From here we can now see the process I previously used to create the other turrets. I began by fanning out the staircase upward. This nicely fills the turret's interior and gives us a good frame around which to build. Placing the upper archway, I again took some brick and framed the design, then filled the outer shell, and proceeded to raise the turret's internal walls. Locating the tower center, I laid down some wooden fence as a visual marker and a placeholder for a future light source. Expanding stone circles out from the center point, I toyed with several sizes, trying to determine a good width for the turret's outer segment. After a few attempts and some additional adjustments to the upper reaches of the tower, I managed to find a design that I was happy with. Filling in this outer area with wood to continue the general theme, I filled any remaining gaps in the top segment, then crenellated the turret's upper wall. After adding some quick embellishment to the underside, I moved back to the inner wall and began on its roof. Like the other towers, this central turret will also feature a peaked nether brick cap, which is supported by a layer of upside-down stone brick stairs. After adding this stone brick layer, I started placing the nether brick. By placing upside-down stairs underneath and standard stairs above, I moved upward and inward. It took some time to get the interior and exterior formed fully, as stairs can be a bit of a hassle to deal with sometimes, but eventually I reached the top and created a nice looking slope using slabs for the very peak. Under this whole segment, I designed and constructed the supporting undercarriage, spinning myself around the tower as I used stone brick stairs to slope the outer edge down into the tower itself. Like the other towers and the rest of the wall, I made sure to design the structure with a double thick outer layer. This allowed me to create some nice outer designs by simply digging into the tower and adding stairs and slabs to specific points. From the other side, we can also see the finished upper wall from behind with a completed and connected internal structure. With the central tower complete, it was time to construct the upper gateway. I wanted the mountain entrance to pass underneath the walls and through the solid stone, so I carved into the section closest to the wall and formed a space through to the edge of the shard. Along the outer edge of the shard, I then began construction of a walkway coming out of the tower. My intention was to have the upper gateway travel to and then around the shard's edge. From here, it would then extend upwards into a barracks, and along this upper pathway to enter the topmost tower. After painting stone brick over the area, I continued to build the outer walkway. Like the wall far below, this segment hangs out over the edge of the shard, and is supported by a similar sloping design of stairs and bricks. I had to modify and incorporate this curve into the design, changing the direction of the stairs partway through. As with the rest of the wall, I applied a layer of wood slabs across the top, and made sure to crenellate the wall as I continued building. Reaching where I determined would be the end of this upper path, I formed the corner where the wall will extend back towards the interior, and then moved along this path and widened it ever so slightly by carving away at the intersections of stone. Selecting this inner stone region, I turned it to stone brick. From here, I then started carving a path back into the shard and continued the walkway along this path. Again copying my archway design, I placed it into the stone structure and began honing its edges for what would become part of the fortifications. Taking nether brick stairs, I began forming a similar roof to the turret peaks, and cleared off the top layer of stone brick to prepare for this design. I hollowed out the interior, forming a small structure atop the wall, then spent some time inside laying down a wooden floor and forming a small window. Moving back to the structure's roof, I continued my design with supporting stone brick steps, followed by a layering of nether brick stairs. It took some time to get these layered just right, as again, stairs can be tricky at times and require some precise and careful placement, but I made some alterations to the design as I worked, cutting the roof off a bit shorter than my first draft. I also performed some internal work, forming the supporting roof structure and making some changes to the floor plan and window. With the internals worked out, I sealed off the top with nether brick slabs, before finishing off the design with some additional stairs and slabs. With this complete, I moved back to the entry passage. Back underneath the upper wall by the gate, I started forming the passage, granting entry to the base in a way quite similar to the curved wall from our last session. Carving into the stone, I formed a shell of stone brick around the passage. I placed plenty of torches to keep the area well lit and made sure to maintain an even and decently spaced width. This allows somewhat easier movement in an otherwise confined space. Instead of wood for the floor, I went with stone slabs. I really like their look in this texture pack, and they give this passage its own unique feel. While the passage does follow the very curve of the shard, I stayed away from making any windows. I liked the feel of this enclosed area, and any openings would simply have an empty view of the endless blue abyss. You may notice at this point a subtle change in design. Similar to our construction of the walkway above, I needed to incorporate the curve of the shard, which meant a small section of the entryway was widened ever so slightly. Earlier, I placed the nether brick wall ahead. This is to mark the end of the hallway so I wouldn't dig too far and end up outside my preset plans. Moving on the structure atop these upper fortifications, we can now get a look at the designs held within. Below this structure, I formed the upper barracks and connection with the underpass entryway. What was a solid wood floor has given way to a stairwell leading deeper into the stone. Traveling down these steps, we turn the corner and see the space I formed for the barracks. This room was not empty for long, as I added wooden supports and other decor such as beds and chests to make it feel more like a barracks. NPCs will spawn here, traveling down through the underpass to assault the enemy base. Between these end chests, I continued the design lower, with yet another stairwell. Curving slightly downwards and away from the barracks, we can reach the final downward path. With stone slabs in sight, we found ourselves level with the underpass. Down these steps, and curving round the corner, a sizable space is revealed. At this point, things become more familiar, as the design is similar to that of the underpass itself. At the far wall, I created a raised platform and added a ladder to the barracks above. This area is not so easily accessible, however, as I then sealed it as an additional fortification from which players can harass hostiles traveling through the passageway. Around the corner, we now see the underpass through which forces may enter and leave the base. Back outside, I started improving the design of the upper gate. After thickening the walls and adding a slight slope to the top, I went to work inside. Like the lower gateway, I dug into the walls and roof, adding iron bars and wood fence. Atop this gate, I began constructing a gatehouse to overlook the entrance. I quickly raised the walls and added in several windows, stacking the fortification up against the mountain stone. I then proceeded to layer on another brick roof in the same fashion as our other designs. Finishing this off, I then placed in 2 more windows before moving on to the next item. Again at the lower base, it was time to place the lower barracks. I framed off an area, then replaced the dirt with stone brick, before grabbing my archway design and pasting it to one end of the barracks. Quickly fixing up the edges over the future mineshaft, I raised the walls of the structure and then added a layer of wood slabs for the flooring before setting part of the roof in place. I made some modifications to the archway, and then lit up the interior with a smattering of torches. Taking stairs, I formed a path from the lower level up to the roof. With this pathway formed, I created the internal structure. We don't have the best view from this perspective, but I laid down a design similar to that of the upper barracks, stacking beds and laying down chests. I also realized I wanted the floor to be half a block lower, so I removed the wood slab flooring and replaced the stone brick with full wood blocks. With this done, I filled in the roof and added a raised wall. Laying down more wooden slabs like our other fortifications, I extended and crenellated this upper segment, creating a defensive position atop the barracks. NPCs will spawn from inside the structure, then proceed across the roof and out the main gate to strike at their enemies. Coming down from the forward edge of the barracks, I placed another stairway, leading down towards the gate. Curving around the wall, I made sure to protect the stairs with a well-sized wall of their own, and ensured the entry was wide enough for easy travel. Defenders will use this shielded stairway to exit the barracks, and enemies must fight their way up this choke point to further breach the base. From here, I started making a cobblestone pathway from the entrance. After determining the size, I cleared the center of grass and dirt, and using World Edit, filled that center in with water. Using the replace command, I was then able to quickly fill the area with cobblestone. Moving to each of the towers, I laid down a small path for them in turn. While NPCs won't be entering these points, I have placed pressure pads inside each tower's base, allowing players to leave the towers quickly if necessary. From here, I improved the forward courtyard's design by framing the barracks stairs using the cobblestone path. On the other side of the barracks, I brought the path out and up to the large stairway. Laying down the cobblestone path, I replaced or overlaid the grass and dirt and used cobblestone slabs to gently slope up towards the wall. After placing some final fixes with dirt and cobble, the lower courtyard was more or less complete. Skimming through the forest, we can see the open gate ahead, with guard towers looming above. Passing under the gateway, we move along the cobblestone path and get a good look at the lower barracks. The first line of defense once inside the base, enemies must fight through this structure in order to scale the walls. Turning away from this, we reach the central tower. Climbing our way upward, we get a good look at the internal design and support structure, and a glance at the upper wall connection. Spiraling even higher, we pass the outer battlements and head for the open turret cap, getting yet another glimpse at the turret's internal design before exiting the structure. From here, we get a good look at the lower base and the path enemies must follow upon their entry. This central tower will certainly be an important point of contest if and when enemies enter the base, as those who wish to move between segments must pass through here. Moving further up the walls, we approach the upper gate and its supporting towers. Attackers will certainly be at a disadvantage here with such little cover to be had in the mountain landscape. Circling round the back, we get a solid view of the base from above. Moving behind the final tower, we come up on the structure housing the upper barracks. Enemies who make it through these defenses will have quite the distance to travel before they reach the inner keep. A great deal has been accomplished here, but there is still much left to do. Soon we will begin on the King's Keep, at the far back end of the base, and its construction will be a major milestone on this shard. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more, leave a like, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.